Of Unoffendable. Enjoy, guys.
Part 2 of Unoffendable. I love this series. It is a banger. Unoffendable. Last week we started this, and it's only going to be a 3-weeker, I believe. But last week we said something simple but confronting. So if you weren't here, it doesn't really matter. But I said this, and this is basically the summation of my whole message, was offense reveals what still owns you. Offense reveals what still owns you. And if you want to go deeper into that, you can have a listen back, like he said, on YouTube. But today we're going to go one layer deeper, because I think this, and it's not the case all the time for every person in every situation, but the reason I want to go deeper is because offense often doesn't stay quiet in us when we're offended. And like we said last week, some of you have offended lots of the time about everything. Many of you are hardly offended at all about anything, but maybe when you are, it's big. And so offense doesn't stay quiet. It eventually turns into something. It eventually turns into something. If we let it brew, it eventually turns into anger. And that anger can display differently in different people. It can be all inward and sort of passive-aggressive and or it can be big displays of rage and even physical, that whole spectrum. But if we leave offense there, if we're constantly offended, it doesn't stay quiet. It turns into anger, inward or outward. And I've put this in my notes, and anger feels powerful, but, and we'll come to that in a minute, anger does feel powerful. It feels powerful when you're angry, and there's all sorts of physiological and psychological reasons why it does. But before we get into that, you know, we're all the youth are out of the room, which is great because I can't keep up with their technology. Angie said to me today, "Do you know how the printer works out the front?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's not print. Did you get it printing? Did it print?" Kaylee fixed it. Did you just whack it? Did you turn it off and on again? That's my level of fixing IT. Whose level is that? Turn off, turn on again. It fixes 90% of things. That's what IT departments do. That's all they do 90% of the time. Turn it on, turn it off again. I could work in that department easily. But we live in an age, don't we, of information. Like online, it's all information. IT, it's lots and lots of information. But we also live in an age, sadly, of provocation. That information is mostly provoking. It's an age of information, but it's also an age of provocation. You think about all your news alerts. They're designed for a very particular reason. Years and years and years ago, and maybe I'm a bit naive in thinking this, news was like news. And they'd be describing what was going on in the world. And you'd read it, and you'd have some emotional response, maybe, if it ticked you. But news now is tailored to you. And it's tailored to provoke you. It's tailored, designed to spike your emotion. That's what it's designed for. They spend millions and millions of pounds designing news to spike your emotion. On your phone or on your laptop, it remembers what you like or don't like. It remembers what angers you, what makes you click, what triggers you. And it spikes your emotion. And outrage is now the product that is being sold. And you think it's free, but it's not. It comes at a high cost. Outrage is the product. And you think of social media. Some of you on social media a lot. Check your times on your phone. See how long you spend on it. Social media platforms, what they do is reward reaction. That's what they do. The whole system, the whole ecosystem, and eco, I mean economy system, the whole ecosystem is based around rewarding reaction. That's why they always say, click on here, give us a thumbs up, give us a comment, and all them positive things are great. They grow the algorithm, but you know what grows it more? Negative comments. That's what makes things go viral, is negative comments, is anger. Outrage is the product. And social media platforms, they reward reaction, not reflection. I want you to think about that in the past. When I was a kid, I used to be a paper boy. I used to deliver papers. Age 11, you were supposed to be 12, but I was a big lump, so I got away with it. At 12 years old, I was up at sort of 5:45 in the morning doing lots of paper round stuff, and I used to hate Sunday mornings. I didn't go to church back then, didn't grow up in church. The reason I hated Sunday mornings is because all the posh people that I delivered to had the Sunday Times, the Telegraph, and the Guardian, and they were all about 7 inches thick per one paper. So I actually had to have 2 paper bags on my little BMX. It's probably why I got my back pain. Nothing to do with rugby. all to do with BMXing with 2 bagfuls of papers. But think about it. When you used to read a paper, you had then probably 2 or 3 hours before you'd even speak to another adult at work or a family member, and you'd ponder and think about that and gather your thoughts on a story. It might have been a horrific story, and you might have had an emotional response, but you had time to reflect. And you'd reflect and think, and then maybe react later. Where today, everything is centered around rewarding a reaction, not a reflection. All about reaction, not reflection, I feel, and it's a danger. It's training us, even in our everyday life, not just on online, everyday life, to react and not reflect. When you find a post and something gets your attention, outrage or angry or offended about something, someone's comment on a political thing or whatever gets your goat, what you don't do is scroll past it and think, I'll think about that later, and then I'll comment later on it when I've thought. No, you do it straight away, or you just skip past it because you don't care. They're the 2 things you do. We react, we don't reflect. And we know if something makes you angry, online it travels fast. Does it even in a family? One family member's angry, it goes through the family before Christmas is finished. We understand this is how it works. But the thing is that outrage feels productive. It does. When you're angered and you've been offended by something that's caused anger, that energy feels productive. It feels like you're doing something with it. and it even feels moral. I want you to think about this. When you're angry about something, you feel justified that you're angry. That's why you're angry. Because someone's crossed the line or stepped over a boundary or said something or done something that has butted up or crossed your moral code. What your version of justice is. Someone has stepped over that. And so we feel that anger has power. We feel that anger, is productive. And we also think it's moral. We think our anger is moral because it must be, because someone's crossed a boundary that we think is right and wrong. And sometimes it even feels courageous. You've been angry about something, some big political thing or something that's happened, and you're angry about it, and you display that or talk about it. It feels like you're being courageous, pushing back against some sort of injustice. But here's the tension. What if anger isn't empowering you? What if it's using you? What if it's not empowering because it feels powerful, but what if it's using you? I'm going to say my bottom line, the thing I'm aiming towards for this whole message right off the bat again, and it says this: that anger feels powerful, but it makes you easy to control. You show me someone who's easily angered, I'll show you someone that I can control really easily. Anger feels powerful, it makes you easy to control. And last week we looked at how offense reveals what still owns you, where today really I'm talking about when that offense turns into anger, and anger reveals what's forming you. Anger actually reveals not just how you are right now and what still owns you now. What you react to angrily over and over again reveals what's actually forming you, how you're going to be changed into that in the future. And we're going to look at that to some degree today. But my first point today is this: that anger promises power because it feels powerful, but it produces progressive blindness. It actually makes you get more and more blind. Like as your vision starts to go, as you get older, you need stronger and stronger glasses. And I think the same in our soul, in our life, that as anger grows or is repeated over and over again, it produces a progressive blindness. We get more and more blinkered and have more and more blind spots in us. And I want to talk about this big idea today that anger does sharpen your sense of injustice. That's what it does. Anger sharpens your sense of injustice, but while dulling your discernment to tell between the two of things you should be angry at and things you shouldn't be angry at. It actually sharpens your sense of injustice. Like you're more, as you get older and grumpier, what you think is injustice has become very pointed. You know exactly what's right and wrong in your spirit. When you're younger, you're more sort of feeling your way, you're not sure. But as you get older and grumpier, I love that picture of old grumpy men, young men are not grumpy, but old men are grumpy. I feel like sometimes I'm moving in that direction. And you feel like that, the more tired you get, the more kids you get, the more responsibility. I just get more grumpy and angry. But what can happen in that training process is that our sense of injustice is sharpened. We know what makes us angry because we think it's right and wrong, but our sense of discernment is dulled. It can happen. And so we're going to read from James, the brother of Jesus, effectively wrote this after Christ had died and resurrected. He says this, "My dear brothers and sisters," talking about in Christ, "take note of this." It's not often it says this in Scripture. Take note of this. He said, write this down. It's like most of the people hearing this can't even write. And he's saying it's so important that you need to take note of it. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and what? Slow to become angry. Slow to become angry. It says this in verse 20, because human anger, this is really important, does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Be slow to anger. He's saying, take note of it, please. If anything I've learned from my brother Jesus is be slow to anger, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Because when you're a Christian and you're wired that this is right and wrong, the only thing that's going to anger you, isn't it, is something that's moral and good. And so then that anger is going to produce the righteousness of God in you. And it's like James is warning against that, saying, be careful. Be slow to that. Slow that down. Back that up. Some of you in here, you're very slow to anger already. Others in here, and I could point to you, not so slow. You see, James gives us a countercultural order of things. He tells us to do things opposite to what our body and brain wants to do. He says, quick to listen. How many of your friends are quick to listen? You are, obviously, yeah. But how many of your friends are quick to listen? He says, quick to listen, slow to speak. I've got a few friends that are very slow to speak. But it's a good thing. Even though I find it frustrating. My ADHD brain has finished their sentences before they've even started it. But James says, quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. Where when offense comes in and we're offended and anger builds up, it reverses that order. We react first with anger. We speak loudly and quickly, and we listen selectively or last, if at all. Maybe that's just me. Proverbs says this, 14:29, it says this. Whoever is patient has great understanding, but one who is quick-tempered displays folly. Patience leads to understanding. Quick temper leads to foolishness. And I want to be clear here. I want to take some theological depth. There's some nuance to this, that not all anger is the same. We need to understand this. Not all anger is the same. There's righteous anger that we understand that Jesus even displayed. But righteous anger is about God's honor. And righteous anger is about other people's good and well-being. That's usually righteous anger, where human anger is usually about my ego, my control, my comfort, me, things that affect me. And James is not saying never feel angry. He doesn't say that. Otherwise, what hope is there? He didn't say never feel angry. But human anger does not produce God's righteousness. There's a difference between righteous anger and human anger. And I've put this, that if my anger makes me less like Jesus, it's not righteous. No matter how right I am. And can I tell you, that's so hard for me to say. I love being right. Who likes being right? Love being right. Especially when someone has really pushed a point and they're obviously wrong, and you can even let it draw out. You give them all the rope to hang themselves. It's great. And at the end, you're like, I'm right. Oh, I am right. Oh, yes. And the British way of doing it, if you're American here, the British way of doing it is to say this. Oh, well, I'm sure you're right. You're probably right, actually. It's probably my mistake. Let's have a look, shall we? That's how we do it. Because it feels better at the end of it. If you haven't done it, try it. It's great. That's really bad advice. Don't do that. Oh, dear. If my anger makes me less like Jesus, it's not righteous. No matter how right we are. And I got a little story I want to share with you of a time that anger burned in me. And it took me a long time. I had a list, sadly, of examples I was going to give you. And I deleted all the ones that would make you think really badly of me and lose all respect. They're in the vault. They've been wiped clean. You don't need to know about them ones. You know, especially before I was in church and when I was a teenager, lots of aggression, like physical stuff, punching things, windows, lampposts, no people. Faces? No, I didn't do faces. I was too scared of my mum. But I expressed anger in lots of ways. But this is one that is relatively recent, at least in the last decade, where anger burned in me. And I was in a meeting, a church meeting that was organised. Someone asked, basically, we've got some problems with the church. You want to chat about it? You're the leader. We want to talk it through. And I was like, cool, that's great. It's part of my role. I have to do that. But they had a list of complaints about our church. And I mean a list. It was like 20 things. And I was just like, this meeting is very long. Can you bullet point these? We're going into lots of detail. But they were going through lots and lots of things, complaints. And I'll be really honest, some of them were legitimate. Some of them were legitimate. And it was like, oh, yeah, that's something we could actually do and would work. That would be really good. Actually, that's really good, helpful criticism. Thank you. A lot of them were not. Or they were legitimate, but they were actually caused by one person in the church that caused all these problems for this couple. And it was like, okay, I'll have to deal with that. Okay, yep, that's them, I'll have to deal with that. Okay, that's them, I'll have to deal with that. And so most of the negativity and stuff was pointed at someone else, not at what I was doing wrong, which feels really nice in a meeting, you know. Because I feel like it was going to be an attack on me, but it wasn't really. It was an attack on someone else, so they just didn't know it. And so I had to go away and address all that stuff, and that was great. But the last thing they said, and this is sort of the trickiest one that we want to talk to you about, and it's about your wife. And what I said was, okay, but be very careful what you say. And I said it like that. I said, be very careful what you say. And then what happened is they went, because my posture changed, it must have done. My eyes changed, everything about me must have changed, because they then went from being very aggressive to very shrunken in their chairs. And for about 10 or 15 minutes, we're going around the houses, beating around the bush. And after about 15 minutes, I said, just stop. I have no idea what you're talking about. I was like, you're going to have, sorry if I made you scared. You're going to have to actually speak clearly now, directly what you mean, because I have no idea what your problem is. And then they just said it plainly to me. But what was funny is that in them 10 minutes, I could feel myself burn. In fact, it was immediately. As soon as I said, be careful what you say, I could feel a fire in me. And I mean, I get hot easily, but I was starting to sweat, and I was ready to, throw down. Like physiologically, I was ready to fight. That fight or flight response was like, you better be careful. And I could feel that anger burning in me because I was like, you better be careful what you say. And I was angry before they even said anything. I want you to think about that. I was angry before they even said anything. All they said is, I've got an issue, there's a thing with your wife that I'd like to talk to you about. And I've already assumed it's something horrible, and I'm going to punch them in the face for. Like, my brain's done that already, and physiologically my body's reacted in that way, and I was primed, ready, almost hoping that they say something that I could jump on. Ever been like that? Primed, ready, haven't done anything yet. It's all in here. But it turned out it was a nothing burger. That's what it was. They said that, and I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. I was like, you've completely misunderstood something. And explained to them, and they're like, oh, we've seen that. Oh, no, that's right. And I was like, it was funny. I left that meeting walking out laughing that it was so funny that this thing that I was right on the edge of doing or saying something that I couldn't have walked back. That I couldn't have, it could have been incredibly damaging. And I want to say, if I'm honest, that it was me holding back, being spiritual, and I was overlooking the offense that was coming. But it wasn't. It's just because they were so careful in what they said that they didn't trigger me. And that's not the way that I want to be. But I left smiling. But the way I acted, my body language, my face, even though I didn't do anything or say anything that could be marked down against me, if you like, but the way I was in my head and in my soul, and it was not like Jesus. That's what it was. when I reflected on it, it wasn't like Jesus. Even though I was in the right. Even though their problem they had no basis or foundation. And I was getting angry about me being right. I did not act like Jesus, even though I shut my mouth. And this story is one of like intense anger in me, if you like. But that mid-level anger, because that's not often that we have that. And if you have that a lot in your life, maybe go and see someone, maybe speak to someone. But that mid-level anger or low-level anger of situations in life that repeat over and over can be just as damaging or potentially damaging as them big, monstrous things that happen once or twice a year. And my point is this: if it can trigger you, it can train you. If it can trigger you, if there's things in life that trigger you, it can train you. And I don't actually like that word trigger. It's got too many associations with it. But if it can trigger you, it can train you. It's just because it begins with a T, it helps with the point. But if it can trigger you, it can train you. And the idea I'm talking about is that repeated anger doesn't just express who you are, it forms who you're becoming. If you constantly get triggered by the same thing that causes offense or anger in you, and you're exposed to that multiple times, you dig out this groove in your soul and your spirit, even your physiology in your brain, and the way your neurons connect. It will build these trees and stuff where these pathways are the way you are going to react in the future. You'll get bigger and stronger, more like this. Which is why there's some beautiful advice from Paul in the letter to the Ephesians that says this in Ephesians 4, 26, 27. It says this: in your anger, I love that. You're going to be angry sometimes. In your anger, do not sin. Do not sin. Don't miss the mark. Don't be not like Jesus. In your anger, do not sin. And then it goes on to say, do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. Great advice. If you can ever follow that, it's a very good model, especially in marriage. Sometimes that's hard when you're disagreeing at 2 o'clock in the morning. But it says, and do not give the devil a foothold. In your anger, do not sin. It's like that anger, that offense that leads to anger is the foothold that the devil can have. Not the anger itself. Anger isn't the foothold. It's unexamined anger. It's rehearsed anger. It's anger that goes over and over again that then leads to sin. And if we think of the reality of our life, we scroll and that's what's online. Most of what's on is anger. Unless you're like into cat videos or something, that just shows you that. But we scroll and it's anger and things trigger our anger. We scroll, it's anger. We scroll, it's outrage. We scroll, it's offensive. We scroll. And then what we do as well, if you're this way wired online at least, we share. Look at this thing. We share. And with our comment on, or if you're like me and I don't do social media, I'll share it with a person, with the old way of doing it, with the words. It's called talking for youngsters, with the talking. But we share it, we anger, we share that anger with someone else. And what we even bond over that anger. If they're not angry, they're like, I'm not bothered about that. We don't, well, rubbish, you're rubbish. I'll go and share it with someone else who gets angry at the thing I get angry with. And then I feel friends with you now because we're enraged by the same political thing or the same lady who said that thing. We both find that anger. We bond over it and it grows in us. Some of you are like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Phil. Others in here, that's your life. It's the foundation of your relationships, maybe. Why is this important? It's important because whatever you rehearse, you become fluent in. And this is coming from someone who can't do languages. Kaylee said to me today, because we're going to Portugal in May, she said, are you learning some of the words? Learning some of the Portuguese? I'm like, no, I'm English. I'm going to point and I'm going to say it louder. We're so ignorant. But I'm rubbish at languages. I dropped languages as soon as I could in school. I hate it. My brain doesn't work like that. I can't think in another language. I struggle to think in English, if I'm honest. But I struggle with language. But the truth is, whatever you rehearse, you become fluent in. And if we rehearse these aggressions, either outwardly or even inwardly on our own while we're scrolling, we can build up this anger against a person who's actually done nothing wrong. We can build up an anger against a people group. We can build up an anger against a nation. We can build up an anger against a president or a counselor, or we can, with a parent, it doesn't matter. We rehearse it, we become fluent at it until you can do it without even thinking. And what anger does is simplify the world, and complex people become just villains. And that's what's happening in our world with the interconnectedness and the information and the provocation and the outrage. Complex people, and we all are complex, become villains, and disagreement becomes threat. That's what's happened in our culture at the minute. Any disagreement, that's a threat on us. And so we respond with offense and anger. And what happens is that certainty replaces compassion. Our certainty of right and wrong that causes that offense and anger actually replaces compassion in us. And here's the trap, that anger feels strong, but it actually makes you predictable. It really does. Because if it can trigger you, it can train you. If it can trigger you, it can train you, and you just become this version of you that other people can control easily. And anyone who knows me well probably knows how to make me angry. Like my kids know how to make me angry easily, and yours do too. Even if you don't display it in the same way, they can tell your spouse definitely knows, or your ex definitely knows how to make you angry. And anyone who knows me probably knows how to make me angry. And there's levels to it, of course, but everyone who knows me knows how to make me angry. One, be late. But I don't. Tony and Jack, that's one of their ones. Be late. It's like level 1 anger. Primed, ready. Haven't even come through the door yet. I'm primed, ready, angry at you already. That primes me. For me, that's up there, 9 or 10, it's like bullying someone who's helpless. My son's got this trait in him. You see someone bullying someone helpless or doing something horrible, I'm like, that enrages me. If I see you doing that, that will anger me. Lying directly to my face. And I'm not too bad at this. If you're lying to my face, but you don't know that I know that you're lying, then I've got this game going on where we're going to figure it out. But when we both know you're lying and you still go, I'm not lying, that makes me so angry that I'm like, my brain doesn't even compute. It like goes into shutdown mode, where I'm like, you know that I know that you're lying. We've even got video evidence, and you're still saying, I didn't do it. I know you're lying. It's even making me angry now. And it's not even a real thing. These things make me angry. Disrespecting my wife, like I said earlier. This one is like an 11. Threaten my mum. Some of you will be the same. Maybe sons in here particularly who've got a lot of testosterone. Like anyone who'd done that, that would make me angry. My last one, probably the most, is try and convince me that oat milk is milk. Oat milk isn't milk. You can't. I was going to do, yeah. You can't milk oats. Try and convince me oat milk is milk, angers me. Or if you do all of them at once, all I'm going to say is just make sure you can run faster than me. But the trouble with that, and we're joking, but the trouble with that is that it makes me predictable. It really does make me predictable and therefore controllable. For an outside agent who wants to push my buttons and control me, all they have to do is push just the right buttons to anger me. That's all the algorithm has to do on your phone. Just push just the right buttons in your feeds and drip feed you some content that causes repeated and growing outrage. And all of us have got blind spots or sore spots. Some of us have got lots of them. And we're all offended by something like we read last week. And that often turns into anger if left. And that anger is often the default reaction. And if we're honest, most of the time, it's human anger, isn't it? It's not righteous anger. If we're honest with ourselves, the times we're angry, it's more human anger than it is righteous anger. Or maybe that's just me. I'll leave that hanging. No, I'm not. For most of us, it's human anger more than righteous anger. Don't pretend like you're Mary Poppins. For most of us, it's human anger is the thing that comes to the top, and we try to squeeze it and justify it as righteous anger. The thing is that human anger destroys your soul, and I want to read quickly with the few minutes I've got left about Jonah, the prophet that God sends to warn the city of Nineveh. Maybe most of you know about Jonah. And it's often read in a really positive light, isn't it? That Jonah ran away from God, and then God brings him to Nineveh, and then he obeys God. Oh, happy ending, but that's not really. That's a misunderstood version of that story, really. Because Jonah doesn't want the city to repent. He doesn't want a good outcome. He wants them punished. And after running from God and reluctantly obeying, it's only because God twisted his arm into doing it, something unexpected happens, and the people of Nineveh actually change and repent, and God shows them mercy. And it's like, what a lovely story that is. And that's when Jonah loses it. That's what makes Jonah angry. It's the fact that God shows grace. He's not angry about injustice. He's angry about grace. And he sits outside the city when God said, I'm not going to destroy the city. And he sits there sulking in Scripture. You're flipping at God. Well out of order. You didn't kill all them people. Honestly, that's what he's doing. And he's more upset that God forgave them than happy that lives were spared. That's what Scripture shows us. We read this in kids' church. We just leave that bit off the end usually. But he even got angry when God took away a plant that was shading him. He was in the middle of the desert, and God made a plant grow and shade him to give him shade. And in the morning, God took it away. A worm ate it away real quick. And he got angry about that. And Jonah obeyed God outwardly, but anger had quietly taken over his heart. We're just going to read quickly from Jonah, verse 4, from 1 to 4. It says this, when God had done these things, it says, but to Jonah this seemed very wrong, the grace on that city. And he became angry. He prayed to the Lord, isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? That is what I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. He went the wrong direction, remember. And that's what he was trying to do, get away from this outcome. Not just obeying God, but the outcome that God would allow the city to be and show grace. It says this, I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, check this. Let's talk about going 0 to 100. Now, Lord, take my life. Take away my life. For it's better for me to die than to live. You've done such a good thing to them people over there that it's annoyed me. I've become so offended. My moral code, because they're so nasty people over there, my moral code is better than yours, God. You might as well kill me, because what's the world if you're going to allow them people to live? This is what's going on in his mind. But the Lord replied, is it right for you to be angry? Is it right for you to be angry? You jump down to verse 10, please, Kayla. It says this, but the Lord said, you have been concerned, you, Jonah, have been concerned about this plant, this little thing. You're getting angry about this plant that I gave you for free. Though you did not tend to it or make it grow, it sprang up overnight and died overnight. And he said this, and should I not have concern for the great city of Nineveh? You're worried about a plant, I'm worried about people, in which there are more than 120,000 people. Imagine that. Jonah wanting them to be wiped out. And it says this, who cannot tell their right hand from their left. God was gracious and being like, they're all in a muddle. They're just trying to work their way through life. They've got loads of wrong things going on. I sent you to make them repent. They did. That's good, Jonah. And he's angry. Jonah's anger doesn't make him bold. Doesn't make him a strong, independent man. It makes him small. And God asked Jonah, is it right for you to be angry? And that question still echoes. It echoes to me, it echoes to you. Is it right for you to be angry? Maybe the translation for us, God's asking us, is your anger making you more loving? Is your anger making you more loving? Or is your anger making you more like me? God asking you that? Or is your anger just making you louder? I think Jesus shows us what actual strength looks like. This idea that God's righteousness grows through restraint, not reaction. That's how God's righteousness will grow in us, through restraint, not reaction. Slow to anger. When you contrast Jonah with Jesus, when Jesus was before Pilate, all them false accusations, all the mockery, all the injustice that we read in the Gospels, and yet he doesn't explode in anger. He could have done all them things and probably be right. He was right. Doesn't explode. He doesn't posture up like Peter did. He didn't even defend his ego, didn't open his mouth like we said last week. And I want to be clear, Jesus is not being passive here. He's not being a pacifist and just let it happen to me. What he was anchored. He was anchored. The right to be angry and yet choosing restraint. I want to be like that. Proverbs 29:11 says this, fools vent their anger, but the wise quietly hold it back. That's what I said to you earlier about the meeting where I didn't really express my anger outwardly toward them. I could have tried to get away with it and been, the wise was quietly holding it back. It wasn't really, it was just by chance. The wise quietly hold it back. Some of you are great at this in front of other people. You save it all up for when you get home, between the walls, where no one can judge you, and hopefully no one will tell on you. You see, the key spiritual truth, I think, is slowness is not weakness. Slowness is spiritual. And that's really hard for someone whose ADHD-type brain is wired my way, that slowness is not weakness. Slowness in this regard is spiritual. It is spiritual to wait, to restrain, to slow, to anger. Or what it funnels down to, and this line, after I wrote this down, hit me. And I think I've only just learned it probably in the last year, is this. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to, just like you don't have to attend every party you're invited to. Many of you give up lots of excuses why you can't attend. When you've got lots of kids, it's great. There's so many excuses. Can't. Betty's got dentist. You haven't got a child called Betty. Oh, rubbish. We understand we don't have to attend everything, but there's something about an argument, a thing that offends, that we just sometimes feel we have to bite on. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You can not turn up. You can walk away. Because remember, if it can trigger you, it can train you. And so what's the application of this as we finish up? How do we break this outrage cycle that maybe you don't feel is going on outwardly, and you don't shout at people and punch walls and that sort of stuff, but you know inwardly goes on as well? Because this isn't about suppressing anger and just keeping it in. It's about submitting it. There's 4 responses we can do, and the first 3 is more like a TED talk. Number 1, slow the response. Slow it down. This one's good for me. Delay replies. Some of you reply within a minute. Delay a reply. Think about it. Run it through ChatGPT even. I want to be aggressive but not rude. I think I've revealed something there. Number 2, I think we need to name the payoff. What's underneath it? When we're offended and angry, what does anger give me right now? What's the reward when I'm being angered? Is it validation? Is it some sort of superiority? What is it? We need to name the payoff and think about it. We need to wait, think about it to ourselves. Why am I angry about this? Name it to ourselves. And then what we need to do is refuse to rehearse it. Stop replaying arguments. Anyone done that before? An argument you've gone through and then you thought, oh, got a great comeback. Yeah, you're about 2.5 days late though. And you've done it, and you've got even to that. You've built up anger, and the other person doesn't even know they angered you. Rehearsal deepens them grooves. So they're all TED talky, but the 4th one, the spiritual one, is surrender that anger to Jesus. It's not denial. It's not saying it's not there, but you're surrendering it to Him. It's not denial. It's about transforming you into His likeness. And I want to be really clear. This is not saying ignore injustice. I don't think Jesus asked us to do that. It's not saying you've got to stay in abuse. It doesn't say that. This is not what this is. It doesn't say never confront anyone. That's not what this is. Because you can forgive and still set boundaries. You can pursue justice without hatred because Jesus did it. And if you're new to church and you're not really sure about this Jesus dude, this isn't about religion. It's about who controls your inner life. Who controls your inner life? Who's really in charge? Because anger feels powerful, but it makes you easy to control. And outrage doesn't heal the world. It exhausts it. It fractures it. So I ask as I finish, what keeps triggering you? What keeps triggering you? What might it be that it's training you into? Either in real life, person-to-person contact, or even online, because that's just as powerful. Because offense owns us. Anger controls us. If that's true, then peace becomes the most radical form of resistance. I want you to think about that. In a world where everything's angry and outragey, the peace becomes the most radical form of resistance. And I'll finish with this. What if the most rebellious thing you could do in an outrage-driven world is to live unbothered? What if the most outrageous thing you can do, what if the most rebellious, thing you could do is in an outrage-driven world is to live unoffended? And we'll pick this up next week. Let's pray.